Keep to the trail dashcam holds on an empty forest road at night. In high beams, the green trailhead gate is chained. The chain tenses, slackens on its own. On the fogged passenger window, clean handprint blooms from the inside and slides exactly 1 inch. Over dead radio, a careful voice you don't own says, "Don't. Leave Ranger incident file. Red Ridge unit. Night narrative composed after shift. I used to think forests at night were just machines you can. TC wind, turning needles into a choir, creeks doing the math power lines, drawing a low line through your ribs. I'm 25, Night Ranger on the Red Ridge Loop. 12 miles of single track. 1 seasonal campground. A wooden kiosk with maps people fold wrong. My job is simple. Lock the trailhead gate at dusk. Patrol camp loops answer calls about owls that are ghosts if you pay them extra, and keep people on trail. Extra rules from my lead Figueroa. Don't follow whistles you didn't see blown. Don't go down into the ravine alone. And if the dispatch console offers an after-hours shortcut, say no. He laughed like it was a tradition and not a rule. The laugh didn't stick. At 10:56 p.m., I checked the kiosk light. The thermal ticket dispenser the volunteers use for day passes woke without the button and fed a narrow strip with no logo. No fee, just do not leave trail. Along the edge in ghost gray that wasn't the hour, 3:13 a.m., the wall clock inside the kiosk said 10:56. I stuck the strip under the Plex mat because paper makes rules heavier. The first odd thing was polite. 2 knuckles tapped the glass of the truck cab, measured, not thermal pop. In the side mirror, my own face arrived half a beat late and behind my shoulder. A second head leaned close to my left ear, mouth parted like it had just reached the first half of don't. I blinked until Glass remembered it was allowed to lie less. Dispatch pinged my MDT with a card I didn't request. Open gate for night hikers? It drifted into the corner like an apology. Big green button waiting to be mistaken for permission. I pressed deny and pretended electrons respect boundaries. The cab radio clicked to life on its own. Voice slid in slow, careful, like each word was being lowered into place with 2 fingers. Don't leave. Not dispatch, not Figueroa. The museum voice cities reserved for labeling bones. Lupe held 3 tents and a dog who dream barked at promises no one had made. The creek told that same story to a culvert and then forgot it. I wrote quiet night on the clipboard because supervisors like to see that lie in pencil. The letters looked wet longer than graphite deserves. At 11:12, the forest-aligned wind. Lines creaked, tires cooling, 1 long-held note that found my teeth and counted them. In that chord, the green trailhead gatus chain shivered like a sleeper scratching and remembered shame when I said no out loud to steal. On the truck's passenger glass, a palm bloomed from the inside and slid a patient inch before thinning. I put my hand to it because mammals are older than good sense. Through glass and cold, pressure matched present, not pushy ass, if we had agreed to be the idea of door. Camp host said the ravine footbridge had been singing earlier like a bottle. I drove 2 mile 2. A rabbit wondered if my headlights were a religion. At the bridge, the water carried moon scraps downstream like letters it couldn't afford to mail. I stood on the planks, hand on the cable, and felt tap-tap travel through the steel measured. Left to right, tansering itself from the far bank like punctuation, learning a sentence. Body cam captured the creek's breath and mine. 11 hours, 19 minutes, and 23 seconds p.m. Audio wind. Water, 11 hours, 19 minutes, and 26 seconds p.m. Audio tap-tap on cable. 11 hours, 19 minutes, and 27 seconds p.m. Radio. Careful voice. Leave. The trail. 11 hours, 19 minutes, and 29 seconds p.m. Video ahead enters frame reflection on water, tilted toward my left ear, mouth parted on don't. Next second, it is just water. Again. The kiosk printer coughed another strip when I came back to the lot. Edges damp like letters that sweat. Keep to the trail. I tucked it into the visor. The chain on the gate ticked like a watch remembering a wrist. At 11:31, the campground PA, which we never use, whispered a 2-note whistle at the precise pitch we use to signal a lost child. A beat late like a copy running for the bus. I didn't answer. A dome light and loop B blinked like an eye and held. Dashcam shows the trail spur beyond the gate lit by brights. For one frame. The cam sees not conifer and dust, but something that looks like chaff falling slow, as if a harvest somewhere had borrowed our night and brought its own gravity. The next frame behaves like pine again. The ranger truck is not a church, but I sat in it as if prayers were a type of posture. The radio twice tried to hail me with my own voice. I'm here. Behind it, the careful voice sutured. Don't go down. The only down from here is the Ravina slot where wind forgets stories and roots were rope scars. From people who argued with erosion on the truck computer, another card sidled in, night rescue routing, save 17 minutes. The arrow did not choose left or right. It pointed down. I closed the lid on the keyboard and let the map learn shame. At 11:41, the forest aligned again. Lines, water, breath. Ribcage 1 held note, like a long hand on a shoulder. In that breath, the gate chain nudged toward slack. Then, lifted itself like a dog reminded it knows its name. The padlock stayed loyal. The moon backed a truck over the ridge and forgot to leave tracks. I walked to the kiosk because paper had chosen to be. Helpful, the plex over the map fogged a palm a thumb width higher than my mouth can breathe and slid its inch. My headlamp reflection added a tilted head by my left ear, mouth always at the first half of don't, practicing honesty. A tent zipper and loop B sang 8 teeth and stopped. Somewhere uphill, a whistle came back wrong by half a beat, like an echo that had learned ambition. I said no to the parking lot in case it needed to hear it. At 11:49, a text came from a number saved as dispatch, but not using the syntax of our CAD. Confirm free passage 313. The dot on the tiny map sat inside my truck icon, then behind my shoulder, then I pressed the power button until mercy happened. The lock screen flashed 313 and remembered midnight. I printed a sign because signs are spells. After dark, gate stays chained, stay on trail. The tape breathed like a small lung and held. The wind changed languages. The creek hummed a minor key, it didn't know anyone. The silhouettes of the informational signs pretended. To beam in, I walked the loop one more time, counting breaths between steps. Bodycam caught the small waterfall at the ravine flashing silver and then forgetting to exist for a single frame, replacing itself with the flat black of unlit room. The bridge rail under my hand felt like the back of a cold neck. From upstream, tap-tap answered, then from below the planks. Tap-tap, exact and polite. I did not go down. On the truck's passenger glass, a palm bloomed again and slid its inch. I matched it because humans work like that. Pressure matched polite, then left like a friend trained in good exits. I sat the truck at an angle where the dash cam could hold the gate and the kiosks together in one lie. The chain tensed. Went slack, tensed, as if the forest were breathing on its own schedule. The radio offered me its bedtime rule in that careful museum wait. Keep to the trail. The card in the MDT died like a pet snake when you forget it. I ascend to your rope. A camper in Lupa coughed. Another turned in a sleeping bag like a sentence reconsidering a verb. I wrote Quiet Night again because the first one felt lonely and the letters looked exactly as wet as ink should. From the ravine, the whistle returned, 2 notes, a beat late. The bridge accepted the sound into its wood and gave it back smaller. The lines overhead thrummed a little deeper as fog drafted up from the water and learned to be a person. At 12:41, everything aligned lines. Water, wind, motor cooling, the old pain in my right knee like a metronome that forgave one long-held note that pressed the world into a smaller world. In that breath, the cabin's rear glass fogged a palm high and slid. The gate chain kissed the post and stopped being brave. I won't say I was afraid. I'll say that my hands learned a new way to be still in my lap. The forest is not mine, so I rent its edges for work. A little after 1, the night unspooled back into separate sounds. I walked the gravel, listened for new sins, found only a raccoon with a PhD in trash law. The kiosk printer made one last gift, another damp strip. Don't acknowledge whistles. I taped it inside the windshield, where a passenger would read it. The hours between that and 3:13 were a patience I wore like wet wool. A couple arrived at the gate in a car that breaststroked through fog. She said they'd received a message that their friend was hurt at the creek. No number, no sender, just coordinates. I pointed at the sign. I pointed at the locked chain. I pointed at the night. The woman's breath wrote a palm on her own glass and slid an inch, as if the window belonged to the part of the forest that keeps count. They left quietly like people who want mornings. 313 arrived, dressed as rumor. Every small light blinked once and held the green thread in the exit sign at the pit toilet, the sliver on my radio, the pilot on the kiosk. The forest took one long breath through all its parts and let it go. The chain on the gate lifted, settled. On the truck's passenger glass, two perfect palms bloomed, facing each other through fog and slid together 1 inch before thinning to memory. The radio gave me its last mercy in that careful voice. Keep. To. The. Trail. The MDT forgot its ideas and remembered to be a map. Dawn decided to be pine first, and then color. The birds held a small meeting about politics no one had asked them to conduct. Figueroa pulled in at 6 with coffee and the posture of a man who keeps a ledger on nights. Quiet? He asked. Mostly, I said, and handed him the damp strips. Yeah. He frowned at do not leave trail, and keep to the trail like they were regulations he should have written before he believed in them. Printer's old. He decided the supervisor's absolution for phenomena you can stack on a clipboard but not explain to a grant. He rapped the trailhead gate with 2 knuckles and listened like a doctor. Nothing a budget would pay for, answered back. We'll open at noon with volunteers and a safety brief, he said. If the system invented buttons when you weren't looking, we'll uninvent them with rope and a saw at noon. Oh. In a square of daylight that pretended law, we unlocked the gate with witnesses and went no farther than the kiosk for a story people could own. On the underside of the trail map's plex, in tiny pencil none of us could claim, a sentence weighted like a receipt left in a borrowed book. Leave the trail closed. The letters looked pressed up from the other side, as if a hand had written them through plastic and slid an inch to sign. I traded some nights for afternoons and tell people at S for the part of my brain that believes woods are addresses. Some weeks around 313, my apartment radiator knocks twice like knuckles on a trailhead sign, and the bathroom mirror fogs a thumb width higher than I can reach while a palm clears a coin and slides a patient inch. My phone lights with unknown, free passage, and goes polite when I don't answer. When it does, I keep my boots on lines that have been asked to hold me. I don't follow whistles that get the pitch right a beat late. I don't go down where roots keep rope scars. In the steady voice the ridge taught me, I say, keep to the trail for a long. Thin moment, the room hums one note like wind, remembering how to be a single animal. A head leans near my left ear and practices the first half of don't, and then the pipes remember water, the hour lets go of its borrowed number. And whatever was learning my loops a half beat behind me chooses someone else. S for us and leaves mine to daylight chains that mind their posts, and a map that points where feet are allowed to be. Keep the zipper closed, cold open. Handheld phone light inside a nylon tent. The zipper teeth creep a millimeter under no hand. On the nylon, clean handprint blooms from the outside and slides exactly 1 inch. From the dark right next to the mic, a slow, careful voice says, don't. Camp host, incident bundle, audio notes, and fragments recovered from Loop C, Spruce Basin Campground. My name is Evan. I used to think campgrounds at night were just civilized woods rules nailed to a board. Fires that behave if you do, picnic tables with graffiti that reads like an old prayer. I'm 25, second season working nights at Spruce Basin. My job is simple. Verify check-ins, sell ice, log bear sightings, and keep people on their sites. Extra rules for Marla, our ranger. Don't answer whistles you didn't see blown. Don't cross the footbridge to the ravine alone. And if the camp console suggests any convenience after midnight, decline. Like she laughed like it was a tradition we keep to annoy the stories older than us. The laugh didn't stick. At 6:42 p.m., I opened the kiosk and swapped the solar batteries for the light. The thermal pass printer burped a strip on its own no date, no site, just do not open tense. Along the edge, ghost gray digits that weren't the hour. 3:13 a.m. I stuck the strip under the plexi map because paper makes rules heavier. Loop C filled with couples practicing silence and a family whose cooler had elbows. The creek told the same 2 sentences to the culverts and ran away laughing. I sold marshmallows I wouldn't. Eat to a child whose headlamp had already learned to be a crown. I wrote quiet evening in the binder because supervisors love that lie in ink. The letters looked wet longer than pens deserve. Radio log, 8:11 p.m. Me, loop clear, kiosk light, steady Marla. Copy. Don't cross the ravine alone. You're not a salmon, me affirm. And if the console tempts you, give it the silent treatment. Me affirm. Site C12 had a solo camper, tent pitched proper on a pad. Guy in a faded college hoodie, reading by lantern-like textbooks count as talismans. He waved. I waved back with the kind of authority that fits in a vest pocket. By 10:56 p.m., the campground had agreed on one long breath, whined in the spruces. Creek in a lower key, lines in the distance, humming the tone they use to tell your teeth how many they are. In that held chord, the zipper on my own tent at the host site shivered a millimeter like a sleeper scratching, then remembered what closed means. The first odd thing was polite. 2 knuckles tapped the kiosk plexi from inside the glass map, measured, not thermal pop. In reflection, I saw my face a half beat late, and behind my left shoulder, a second head tilt toward my ear. Mouth parted on the first half of don't. I blinked until the plexi remembered it was allowed to be a window and not a door. The camp console on the counter, an old tablet dressed in laminated rules, woke from the kind of sleep. That checks your pockets, first audio. Body mic, 11:03 p.m. Path to loop C. Footfalls on pine needles. Creek minor key. Faint whistle. 2 notes. A beat late. Me, low. No. Far tapped up on metal measured at C12. The lantern made a weak planet in the tent. The solo camper had zipped his door to within 1 tooth of mercy and fallen asleep on top of a book, like a person with a promise. The nylon fogged a palm from the outside 5 long ovals, and a heeland slid, exactly 1 inch before thinning. I laid my hand on my side, because mammals have old habits. Through nylon and cool, pressure matched, me not pushy, just present like a hand through rules agreeing we both exist. 11:07 p.m. Me, Marla, C12 doors breathing. Marla, say the rule, out loud. Then leave it to be true. Me, to nylon, keep the zipper closed. Marla, copy. Don't follow any invitations that aren't spoken by mouths you can see. The camp console at the kiosk pinged a card into the corner of its dark face, even with its screen down. Night check, C12. Vent flap stuck. Include handheld assistance. It was offering help. It was selling disobedience. I did not touch it. Phone log. Unintended capture. 11:19 p.m. Recorded from my pocket mic. A distant car door thunks. Then the stillness returns. Something touches the tent pole. Tap tap, a voice not mine. Slow and careful, as if words have to be lowered into place with 2 fingers. Don't. Open me. Whispering as if that works on the world. Copy. The kiosk printer coughed a second strip. Edges damp like letters that sweat. Keep the zipper closed. I pressed it under the map with a thumb that learned to be a nail. Body cam. Creek Bridge, 11:31 p.m. I stood at the footbridge like it owed me a story. The planks had learned how to be a drumskin, and the water provided a drummer who didn't. To need a job, the handrail ticked like a wrist. A whistle came up from the ravine to clean notes at precisely the pitch. We use when someone is lost and wants to be found half a beat late, as if the echo had learned ambition. I did not answer. The handrail under my palm tapped back, measured like punctuation learning a sentence. At the Loop C bathhouse, a motion light went on, then off, then offered a third path. A steady state that reads like indecision. The mirror over the sink fogged a hand a thumb width higher than my mouth can breathe and slid its 1 inch. I left the bathroom because rituals are doors. On the host site, the passenger window of my truck received a palm from the inside and returned it. The radio tried my own voice on for size. I'm here. Underneath it, the careful voice sewed on a tag. Leave. closed. The family in Senine turned in their cooler like it was a heartfelt confession. The couple in C5 argued in whispers about which sound was a frog. The solo in C12 dream-flipped his sleeping bag and forgot. The camp console suggested. Like a cat placing a dead permission on your doorstep, night walk through shortened loop. The arrow did not point left or right. It pointed down toward the ravine. I closed the kiosk door and stood on my own feet. I printed a sign because signs are spells. After dark tent zippers stay closed, the tape breathed like a small lung and held. Midnight arrived, disguised as a colder kind of consent. I went back to C12 with a flashlight I didn't turn on. The nylon shimmered like water that had learned patience. The zipper pull nudged a millimeter under no hand. I said no in the same voice you use for dogs who know better. Audio fragment 2:12:06 a.m. Taken by the solo camper's phone from inside C12 recovered from cloud. Soft breath. Maybrick Creek tap-tap on the pole. Unknown voice careful. Close. Don't. Go down. A beat later. Zipper metal whispers one tooth. Solo camper groggy. Did you see recording stops itself trail cam? Gate at the trailhead 12:14 a.m. The chain tenses. The padlock remembers its oath. In high beams washed by fog, tiny debris acts like chaff in a room that never saw a harvest. The next second knows pine again. 12:23 a.m. The camp console screen still down found, a way to make itself heard in reflection off the kiosk glass. Weather shift. I turned my back to it and walked the loop, counting the steps between the 3 old stumps that used to be trees, and are now furniture for the insects that learn to be cities. At the split for the ravine, 2 knuckles tapped the guardrail, patient. The creek spoke a different minor. The line poles above the lot harmonized when they weren't asked to. I do not go down into places that collect shadows like rent. The solo camper woke enough to aim his light at the zipper. Body cam caught the beam hitting nylon and coming back wrong for a single frame. The way light looks when it has learned a different gravity off-screen. For that frame, the inside of the tent showed a head leaned toward his left ear, mouth open in the shape of don't. The next frame remembered nylon. I found myself at the host site taking inventory of what positions your hands can be in when you are preparing to say no for an hour. The kiosk printer served me a 3rd damp strip. Don't acknowledge whistles. I taped it to the inside of my vestibule, because tents are churches when you need them. 12:41 a.m. The campground chose to be choir. Wind, creek, lines. My ribs aligned into one long note that made everything honest, in that held breath. Yes. C12 zipper kissed its first tooth and forgot bravery. On the nylon, a palm bloomed high and slid its inch. I matched it with my hand from the outside. Pressure matched, steady, like a hand that understands the rule of doors, from the ravine. The whistle returned a beat late. The bridge gave it back smaller, as if to say, not tonight. The rest of the hour wore the face of patience. A raccoon tried case law at the bear box and lost. Someone in C5 giggled in sleep, an innocence old enough to make thieves apologize. I walked my circle, took my breaths, practiced the sentence that was going to matter more than any of them. Keep the zipper closed. There was, briefly, a car at the gate, 2 silhouettes, and a worry about a text that had said someone was hurt at the creek. No number, just coordinates. I showed them the sign. I showed them the chain. I showed them the night. Their windshield briefly fogged a palm from the inside and slid its inch, like the part of the forest that counts had become a passenger. They believed me. They left. 3:13 arrived like it always does for people who work nights. A rumor that turns into an hour while it is happening. Every small light blinked once and held the kiosk pilot. The exit thread in the bathhouse. The tiny green in my radio. The campground took one long breath and let it out. On the solo camper's nylon, 2 perfect palms bloomed facing each other through the fabric and slid together 1 inch before thinning to memory. The careful voice arrived under everything else, offered its last kindness like a bowl of water to a dog who has learned new rules. Keep the zipper closed. The camp console decided to be a clipboard again and forgot its ideas. Dawn experimented with color and committed to pine. Birds convened a committee on loudness. Marla drove in with coffee and the stance of a woman who can evict weather by speaking to it clearly. Quiet, she asked. Which is how people who count nights ask if you made nothing happen. Mostly, I said, and laid the damp strips in her palm. She frowned at "do not open tents and keep the zipper closed" like they were regulations she wishes she'd de-written before she believed in them. Printer's old. She said the supervisor's absolution for nights that need a priest and a mechanic. She tapped the tent pole of C12 with 2 knuckles and listened like a doctor to a sternum. "Nothing you can bill," answered back. "We'll do a daylight check with witnesses," she said. "If the system learned new buttons, we'll unlearn them with rope and sunlight. At noon, in the honest square where law remembers it is welcome." We called the solo out of his tent and had him stand aside. The nylon fogged one last palm and slid its inch as the zipper came down. Inside, a sleeping bag that had memorized the shape of a rib cage. A book face down on the page that asks for a sacrifice it doesn't name. Nothing with a pulse we didn't bring. On the underside of the fly, in tiny pencil none of us owned, someone had written, "Leave the zipper closed." The letters looked pressed up from the other side, like a hand wrote them through fabric. I traded a few nights for afternoons and told people it was for my spine. Some weeks around 313, my apartment radiator knocks twice like a polite tent pole. And the bathroom mirror fogs a thumb width higher than I can reach, while a palm clears a coin and slides a patient inch. My phone brightens to unknown. Vent. And then thinks better of it when I don't. When it asks in other ways, I keep my hands off promises sewn into doors. I don't follow whistles that get the pitch right a beat late. I don't go down where the ravine keeps everyone's mistakes in cold storage. In the steady voice the campground taught me, I say, "Keep the zipper closed." For a long, thin moment, the room hums one note like a forest practicing how to be one animal. A head leans near my left ear and practices the first half of dawn. Tea, and then the pipes remember water the hour, lets go of its borrowed number, and whatever was learning my loops. A half-beat behind me chooses someone else's night and leaves mine to daylight printed rules, under plexi and doors, that remember the size of a hand. Keep the line taut, helmet cam widens on a limestone squeeze. The rope hums a thin note under tension, on a slick wall ahead. A clean handprint blooms in condensation and slides 1 inch. Somewhere beyond the beam, a slow, careful voice carries through rock like a secret lowered with both hands. Don't. They said Kira was 25 and good with maps, which is to say she liked the kind of truth that fits in notebooks. Third shift on a weekend expedition, she works the Servalaser rangefinder. Waterproof notebook, a bag of flagging tape that behaves. The crew is 4 bodies and a call-out time written in Sharpie on the cave gate. The rules from the coordinator are the boring kind that keep funerals outdoors. Buddy system or go home, always rig redundant. Respect the water's mood, and never re-rig the drop after midnight. Extra cautions because caves are older than they pretend. Dante follow whistles, you didn't TC blown. Don't crawl down if you can't see how to crawl up. And if the tablet offers any helpful shortcuts after midnight, decline without arguing. The coordinator makes a joke, doesn't stick. They descend into the karst, a throat that learned patience. The first room is a comfortable lie-flat floor, old carbide soot at the ceiling, a relic of someone else's courage charcoaled into the rock, an arrow and a date from a year that docentee admits smartphones. A cheap thermal label printer in Kira S. Packment for tagging survey stations spits a strip without a press. Do not untie. Along the margin in ghost gray, that isn't the hour. 3:13. She tucks the strip behind the notebook's elastic, because paper gives rules mass. The rope drops out of the room into a pit. The rigging is textbook bolts, like little planets, a figure eight that believes in itself, a second anchor because the earth can change its mind. Omar goes first on descender, waits singing, then Tamsin, then Kira, with a device that forgives. The last man, Mott, stays on top to watch the anchor and talk to the time. The first odd thing is polite. 2 knuckles tap the aluminum carabiner at Kira's hip measured, not scrape. She sweeps the beam and catches her own reflection in a damp glaze on limestone. 1 beat behind and a second head leaning near her left ear, mouth parted on the first half of don't. She blinks until rock remembers to be rock. Radios crackle with the kind of confidence plastic wears. Omar's voice bounces from below. Clear. Tamsin follows. Good air. Kira calls on rope and slides into a shaft where the stone is a book spined with old water. The rope hum becomes the room's pulse. Halfway down, the wall fogs a palm from the inside of the rock. Condensation in a skin-thin sheet slides 1 inch and vanishes into sweating gloss. Kira reminds the air that physics is a contract and names the pitch for the notebook. Drop 1, 21 meters, chill breeze. They gather at the lip of a stream passage that talks in a voice braided from drip and flow. The survey tablet wakes and edges a card into a corner of its own black. Routing assist available. Predicted time save. It offers no arrow left or right. It points down. Kira flips the cover closed like a parent closing a window and tapes the corners with patience. The intercoms they don't have click anyway. A voice lifts through the stones low and careful, like each word is being lowered into place with 2 fingers. Don't. It. Not Mott. Not any of them. The kind of museum voice cities give to bones. Omar ties a handline along a waist-deep run. Tamsin sets survey stations with reflective tacks that fight shadows. Kira sights angles, measures shots, writes numbers that believe in being small. They move through a keyhole. The limestone pinches a waist and opens a hip. The water's temperature is a sentence about glaciers. Kira's calves translated as law. At 11:12 p.m., the cave aligns flow, rope hum, a faint transformer tone that doesn't belong. Kira's teeth into one held note that teaches bone to count. In that chord, the knot at the belay shivers a hair as if a sleeper scratched, then remembers shame. She murmurs to it like a dog you 1T let on the couch and watches the rope be loyal again. They reach a boulder choke wired together by gravity's bored cousin. Whistles carry wrong in rooms like this. Someone upstream sends a 2-note call exact pitch for a turnaround, but it lands half a beat late, a copy slightly drunk. Omar shakes his head once. Tamsin marks an X on paper like punctuation, learning a sentence. Kira keeps the line tied to waist-level silver anchors. Algae has yet to introduce to God. The label printer coughs another strip into Kira's palm, edges damp as if letters sweat. Leave the line tied. She smooths it into the notebook and doesn't show anyone, because superstition is a privacy right. In a low crawl, helmets scrape like cutlery. The floor is a compromise made of polished pebbles and old bone. Save for one frame, Kira's helmet cam shows not rock but chaff, drifting through stale air, as if a harvest elsewhere has leased this tunnel for a breath. The next frame returns to geology. At the lip of a narrow drop, Tamsin breathes into her mic. The radio returns Kira's voice, half a breath late. I'm here. Then the careful voice under it gives a bedtime rule. Leave it. Kira rigs the second pitch on known bolts, checks angles, CADs a backup that won't win beauty contests and won't kill anyone. She weighs the line, hears the rope talk to hardware, and steps over. The world simplifies into friction and prayer. Midway down, water veers off to argue with itself in a side tube. On the wall at elbow height, condensation blooms a palm, slides an inch, and thins to the idea of touch. She sets her own palm there because mammals have rituals, through wet stone and cold. Pressure matches gentle, present as if a hand through limestone agrees reality is a committee. Omar whistles once, 2 notes that mean okay. The cave sends them back a breath late. Tamsin mutters a word that isn't for radios. A labored pocket of air waits beyond a fallen slab. The candle test becomes a headlamp test instead, which is to say they breathe and listen. The air bothers nobody. Why this feels like lying is between humans and caves. They break into a tall room where the stream remembers the idea of a waterfall, and the waterfall decides to be polite. Kira writes, "Quiet night" in pencil on waterproof pages, because supervisors like to see that lie when they audit maps. The graphite shines wet longer than graphite should. At 11:31 p.m., Mott's voice drops from the surface like a coin down a well. Weather steady, Calout still clean. Kira answers, and her transmission timestamps itself to 3:13 for a second, as if time decided to practice a trick, and put it back on the shelf. Mott says the printer's old, which is how bosses bless phenomena they can't budget. The rope line taps against the wall measured, patient mapping the route with knuckles not attached to a hand. Omar blames current. Tamsin blames nerves. Kira touches the rope and feels it touch back, pressure for pressure, like a handshake through a treaty. The survey tablet, face down, wakes any way screen brightness, nudges the black into a suggestion. Bad air predicted below. Alternate shown. The arrow insists on down. Kira snuffs it with a glove and tucks it under a rock, like the kind of insect you want to name. They eat the kind of food that wants to be remembered as salt, and listen to water pick a key. The drop ahead is short, a ladder of incompetently comforting ledges. Kira rig-proofs everything, then lowers into a room that exists mostly to enforce posture. Her beam finds a sump water filling a low mouth, steady as a breath that doesn't need her. On the slick rock above it, a palm appears, slides 1 inch, and fades. The cave's skin has learned to write. It becomes too easy to imagine following the water. Kira puts her palm on the wall and says to Limestone, "What's she? D. Say to a friend who cannot keep doors closed." No, at 11:49 p.m. All their devices notice each other like animals at the same creek. Radios, lamp drivers, the metal and zippers. Kira feels a single long note sew the room together in that held thread. The belay not above nudges and decides against becoming a story. She kisses her teeth and names the room on paper something that does not translate as invitation. The cave gate 100 feet up the world has little lights to make law look like a Christmas joke. Mott, alone with hardware and the idea of topograph, hears to Knuckles at the gate. Tap tap. He does not open. His headlamp catches his own reflection in the padlock body a beat late and behind his shoulder. A head that leans toward his left ear, mouth parted on Doan. He says the rule to iron and breath. Keep the gate locked. Kira threads back through the boulder choke. Takes the handline that still believes in the way it was tied. The label printer in her pocket gives her a third damp strip. Valid as a prayer card. Don't acknowledge whistles. She tapes it inside the notebook lid because fear likes invitations. The cave tries to be talkative. A whistle rides the stream from downstream to notes perfect to summon anyone who wants to be useful, half a beat late, like Echo being arrogant. Tamsin laughs without humor and says, "Not hired." Omar nods like a preacher to nobody. They climb the second pitch. Kira's ascenders chunk like a zipper at the size of a story. The wall beside her fogs a palm high and slides a patient inch. She doesn't match it this time. Some agreements expire. Between pitches. The stream passage gives them one wrong frame, against half drifting in the beam, as if the tunnel had decided to rent itself to a harvest. The next heartbeat returns them to water, rock, their own noises. The cave is not trying to be kind. It is trying to be the only thing in the room. At 12:06 a.m., they hear Mott on the radio grumble about a text from unknown. Free the line at 3:13? His map dotty should not have a dot sits inside their position and then behind his shoulder and then gives up. He reports it with the tone of someone describing whether two superstitions. The coordinator answers with the universal patch for nights. Printers old, they stage at the first pitch head. The rope stands like well-behaved gravity. The anchor lies about being eternal. Omar clips in first. Wait on the descender. Tamsin clears the path. Kira watches the knot with a patience that confesses to love. The rope taps the wall measured. Patient then stops to be good. The survey tablet, under rock, unlatches its brightness a crack to offer one more liar's favor. Re-rig suggestion for efficiency. Kira pictures her hand doing it. She does not move. At 12:23 a.m., they start up. Omar tops out. Calls safe. Tamsin rises. Her lamp draws little halos on damp stone. Kira waits alone at the re-belay. All the caves wait a culture on her harness. The wall fogs a palm at her shoulder and slides its inch. In her ear, not from radio, not from any throat that owes lungs anything, the careful voice confides the last thing it has to offer before the famous number arrives. Keep the line. Taut the rope hum climbs into her bones. She moves, smooth, measured, faith practiced. At the lip, the rope kisses stone and refuses to be story. She tops out into a room that remembered it was easy. Omar grins like a scar. Tamsin looks like the sermon is over. Mott gives them a nod like a gate that kept secrets. They coil inventory and send up jokes that have outlived more people than they should. The label strips. Curl on Kira's notebook like shed skin. They start toward the exit where physics has agreed with them for exactly as long as it needs to. 3:13 a.m. Arrives dressed like rumor with a time card. Every light they own blinks once and holds the tiny green on the radio, the battery wink on a headlamp. The exit thread on the gate, miles of rope and rock away. The cave takes one long breath through water, hum, rib cage, and lets it go. On the wall beside the rope, two perfect palms bloom in condensation, facing each other, and slide together 1 inch before thinning to memory. The knot stays what it was hired to be. The rope feels like an honest sentence. The careful voice, everywhere and nowhere, offers its last kindness. Keep the line. Taut, the tablet under the rock forgets about helpfulness and remembers to be a rectangle. Dawn is on the other side of geology, but outside has decided to be a color by the time they sign the call-out board. The coordinator is waiting with thermoses and the posture of someone who owns clipboards on purpose. Quiet? She asks, in the way people who count nights ask if you left the world unaltered. Mostly, Kira says, and lays the damp strips across the plastic of the table. The coordinator frowns at do not untie and leave the line tied like she wishes she'd written them into policy before she believed in them. Printer's old, she says, the supervisor's absolution for phenomena you don't requisition. She raps the gate with 2 knuckles and listens like a doctor to a sternum. Nothing coughs in a way a ledger would fund. We open for the field class at noon, she says. If the system invented buttons, we'll uninvent them with steel and rope. By noon, the cave is just a hole that eats stories for a job. On the inside of the gate, in pencil that none of them owns, small letters wait where no glove would write comfortably. Leave the line tied. The words look pressed up from the other side, as if a hand wrote them through iron and forgot about knees. Kira. Trading nights for afternoons is a decision shaped like a spine. Some weeks around 3:13, her apartment radiator knocks twice like a descender bumped the wall, and the bathroom mirror fogs a thumb width higher than she can reach, while a palm clears a coin and slides a patient inch. Her phone breathes a message from unknown. Free the line? She practices silence like a sport. When it asks in other ways, she keeps her hands off knots that pretend affection. She doesn't follow whistles that get the pitch right a beat late. She doesn't go down where the map points only to water and patience. In the voice the cave taught her, steady and small, she says, keep the line taut. For a long, thin moment, the room at home hums one note like limestone, remembering there are oceans in the dark. A head leans by her left ear and practices the first half of don't, and then the pipes remember water. The hour lets go of its borrowed number. Whatever was learning her rigging roots a half beat behind her, chooses someone else's passage and leaves hers to daylight. Steel that means it, and rope that keeps its promises.